Have you ever judged someone solely based on their appearance without truly knowing who they are? What if the person you looked down on turned out to be the one who held your fate in their hands? That morning, Marcus, a quiet man exuding an air of composure, stepped into the kitchen of Le Grand Luxe, one of the most luxurious restaurants in New York. He wasn't dressed extravagantly, nor did he carry himself with importance, just an ordinary delivery man pushing a cart loaded with fresh produce through the heavy steel doors. But instead of being welcomed as an essential part of the restaurant's supply chain, Marcus immediately became the subject of whispers and ridicule. Nathan, the restaurant's arrogant head chef, eyed him with disdain. The waitstaff exchanged smirks, murmuring amongst themselves, and some even played little pranks on him. To them, Marcus was nothing more than a lowly worker, someone unworthy of setting foot in such an opulent space. Marcus didn't react. He continued his work calmly, observing every glance, listening to every word, because he knew something that no one else in that kitchen did. In just a few hours, everything would change, and they would be the ones who regretted it the most. Marcus continued pushing the cart deeper into the kitchen, feeling the weight of scrutinizing gazes pressing down on him. The atmosphere in Le Grand Luxe's kitchen wasn't just heated by the roaring stoves but also by the arrogance and disdain radiating from the staff. Nathan, the restaurant's head chef, stood with his arms crossed at the counter, his eyes flicking over Marcus as if he were nothing more than an unwelcome inconvenience. "Next time, make sure you're on time," he said coolly, his voice carrying an air of authority. Marcus glanced at his wristwatch. He had arrived exactly on schedule as per the order request. But to people like Nathan, any excuse was enough to assert dominance. "I'm here at the agreed time," Marcus responded evenly. Nathan smirked, then turned to a server folding napkins nearby. "What do you think? How long before he drops something?" A ripple of laughter spread across the kitchen. One of the staff members standing near the oven muttered under his breath, "Doesn't seem like anything special. Guess they'll let just about anyone in here." Marcus remained composed, silently unloading the supplies. The goods he delivered were nothing short of premium, fresh seafood from the Maine coast, imported Wagyu beef from Japan, organic vegetables grown under strict standards. These were the very ingredients that upheld the restaurant's reputation. Yet the man delivering them was deemed insignificant. Suddenly, one of the kitchen staff pointed toward a crate near the door. "Hey, looks like you forgot one." Marcus turned and spotted a wooden box in the corner. He was certain he hadn't overlooked anything, but he stepped forward to check anyway. As he bent down and lifted the crate, he found it completely empty. Laughter erupted instantly. "Relax, man, it's just a joke," one of the staff members chuckled, clapping Marcus on the shoulder in mock camaraderie. Marcus set the crate down, his gaze sweeping across the amused faces before him. He wasn't angry, but he remembered. Every sneer, every mocking laugh, he took note of them all. Because in just a few hours, they would be the ones regretting their behavior today. Marcus continued his work, unfazed by the mockery around him. He carefully placed each crate in its designated spot, ensuring everything was delivered as requested. Though they looked down on him, he carried out his job with professionalism and quiet composure. But the kitchen staff didn't stop. A young server, dressed in a pristine white apron, nudged his colleague and whispered, "Betty's never even had enough money to eat here, let alone own anything." This time, Marcus heard it clearly. A flicker of coldness passed through his gaze, but his expression remained unreadable. He was used to these kinds of judgments. Over the years, he had seen countless people evaluate others based solely on appearances, never bothering to ask about the story behind them. Nathan, the head chef, added another jab. "Well, looks like the delivery company doesn't have any standards these days." Laughter erupted again. A few staff members lowered their heads, sensing something was off, but no one spoke up. No one wanted to defend someone they considered beneath them. Marcus paused for a moment before continuing to stock the walk-in refrigerator. The kitchen remained sweltering, but inside him, a storm was brewing. He wasn't angry, he was simply waiting. When the last crate was in place, Marcus retrieved the invoice and walked over to the counter, handing it to Nathan for a signature. The chef barely looked at it as he scrawled his name, then tossed the paper aside as if it were nothing more than an insignificant task. "You can go now," Nathan said, his tone dismissive, as if Marcus had never existed in that kitchen. Marcus took the signed invoice, slowly tucking it into his pocket. As he turned to leave, one final comment reached his ears, this time. A step too far. Hurry up and get back to where you belong. Marcus stopped mid-step. The kitchen fell silent. The laughter that had filled the space moments ago vanished as everyone sensed something had shifted. Slowly, Marcus turned back around, his gaze sweeping across the room. He was no longer just a quiet delivery man. He was someone with authority. Someone who commanded attention. I didn't come here, he said, his voice low but unwavering, just to deliver supplies. I came to deliver a lesson you all need to learn. Then he turned and walked out of the restaurant. But this wouldn't be the last time they saw him. In just a few hours, they would realize they had made the biggest mistake of their careers. Just a few hours later, the entire staff of Le Grand Luxe gathered in the main dining hall at the manager's request. No one knew why, only that the restaurant's new owner had an important announcement to make. Nathan stood with his arms crossed, clearly annoyed, probably just another rich old man trying to show off. He muttered to a colleague. In his mind, no one was above him, except for a few wealthy owners who never set foot in the kitchen. The grand double doors swung open. Marcus walked in. He was still wearing his delivery uniform. No expensive suit, no flashy display of wealth, nothing like the image they had envisioned for a restaurant owner. But his gaze, the quiet authority in his stride, froze the entire room in place. The smirks vanished. No one dared to say a word. Greg, the restaurant manager, a middle-aged man with years of experience, was the first to break the silence. His voice wavered in shock. Marcus, what are you doing here? This meeting is for staff only. Marcus smiled, but it wasn't the restrained, patient smile from that morning. This time, it was the smile of a man in control. I know, Greg, he said, his voice calm yet commanding. That's exactly why I'm here. Nathan frowned, sensing something was off. Wait, don't tell me. Marcus met his gaze directly. I'm the new owner of Le Grand Luxe. Silence. All traces of mockery disappeared. Faces that had sneered at him hours ago now turned pale. Greg stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. Nathan stood frozen, as if he had just been punched in the gut. Marcus took a step forward, letting his eyes sweep over each person in the room. He didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need to threaten anyone. His very presence was enough to make them all feel the shame creeping up their throats. I was here this morning, Marcus said slowly. I watched how you worked. But more importantly, I watched how you treated someone you assumed was beneath you. Nathan swallowed hard, his eyes darting around, searching for a way out. But there was no escape. Marcus wasn't just a delivery man. He was their boss. And now, they had no choice but to face the truth they could no longer ignore. The air in the room was heavy. The staff who had once laughed now kept their heads down, avoiding Marcus's gaze. No one could have imagined that the man they had mocked just hours ago was the one who now held their future in his hands. Nathan, the arrogant head chef, was the first to break the silence. He forced himself to stay composed, crossing his arms as if he still had control. So what? He scoffed. Owner or not, you were still just a delivery guy before this. A few employees flinched at his words. But Marcus didn't look surprised or offended. He had encountered men like Nathan his entire life. People who refused to admit their mistakes, clinging to their pride until the very end. He stepped closer, meeting Nathan's eyes directly. You're right, Marcus said calmly. I was a delivery man. Before that, I was a kitchen assistant, a dishwasher, a night shift janitor scrubbing restaurant floors. I've done every so-called lowly job you can think of. Nathan opened his mouth to respond, but Marcus didn't give him the chance. And those jobs brought me here. They taught me how to build a business, how to run a successful restaurant chain. They led me to this moment, where I now decide how Le Grand Luxe operates. Marcus turned his attention to the entire staff. But this isn't just about me. It's about all of you. Ask yourselves, if I really were just a delivery man, would your behavior this morning have been acceptable? Silence fell once again. Some employees lowered their heads in shame, while others shifted uncomfortably, their expressions uncertain. I don't need the best staff, Marcus continued. I need a team that respects people. Because none of us are above the work we do. And if you believe your position makes you better than someone else, then you don't belong here. Nathan clenched his jaw, the weight of Marcus's words pressing down on him. For the first time, He realized that his arrogance had put everything he had at risk. Marcus didn't need to fire anyone. He simply laid out a truth they all had to face. If they refused to change, they would be the ones who eliminated themselves from the game. No one dared to laugh anymore. No one whispered or murmured behind his back. The truth had struck a heavy blow to their pride. The man they had looked down on was the one who held the highest authority here. Marcus stood in the center of the room, his gaze sweeping over each face. Some employees lowered their heads in shame, while others remained frozen, as if finally realizing a lesson they should have learned long ago. But the most surprising reaction came from Nathan. His arms were no longer crossed in defiance. His face was tense, his jaw clenched. For the first time in years, he was no longer the most powerful figure in this kitchen. A few seconds passed before he swallowed hard and spoke, his voice stripped of its former arrogance. I didn't mean to be disrespectful. I just thought. Marcus raised a hand, cutting him off. No need to explain, Nathan. He stepped forward, looking directly at the man who had mocked him just hours ago. Actions matter more than words. If you truly want to change, then prove it. Nathan fell silent. The entire room held its breath, waiting for his response. Finally, he gave a small nod, his resistance fading. I understand. Marcus turned to the rest of the staff. I'm not here for revenge. I'm not here to make anyone afraid. I'm here for one reason: change. His eyes moved across the lavish kitchen, a space that symbolized excellence yet lacked the most fundamental element: respect. Le Grand Luxe will no longer be a place that values power and status over people. From this day forward, everyone who works here, from the head chef to the dishwasher, from the servers to the delivery workers, will be treated with the same respect. If you can't accept that, then this is not the place for you. The room remained silent, but this time, it wasn't out of fear, it was out of understanding. Some employees nodded subtly, a few even whispered quiet apologies. They had learned. Marcus took a deep breath, then turned and walked out of the room. He didn't need to hear their apologies. He didn't need to witness the change immediately. Because he knew that today, something important had been planted in their hearts, a lesson in respect and the true value of a person. As Marcus stepped out of the room, he knew he hadn't just changed a restaurant, he had changed a mindset. The staff of Le Grand Luxe would never forget that day. They had learned that status does not define a person's worth. The man wearing a delivery uniform today could be the leader they would have to respect tomorrow. Nathan, once the most arrogant of them all, had been forced to confront the truth that he was not bigger than his job, nor greater than those around him. From that day forward, the once proud head chef changed. He no longer looked down on his subordinates but instead treated them with the respect they deserved. The lesson was simple: in life, people are often judged by their appearance, their job, or shallow assumptions. But the dishwasher today could be the owner tomorrow. The delivery man could be the one building an empire. Respect costs nothing, but the price of lacking it could be everything. So next time, before you rush to judge someone, remember, you never truly know their story. Because the person you look down on today just might be the one holding your future in their hands.